Welcome, these will be my thoughts on Arrow Season 3, Episode 8, The Brave and the Bold. The episode is rated CV-14, so this video there will be spoilers for the episode and everything Arrowverse leading up to it. Not for anything Arrowverse or anything else for that matter that came out after this episode first premiered. Another episode that I absolutely loved. So, I wanted to start by rectifying, wow, that sounds painful, something I cannot believe that I somehow managed to forget to mention. Obviously, I absolutely loved seeing an arrow go through the Flash logo in the Flash, crossover episode. And this time we get Flash running around the Arrow title card. Just wonderful. And I also quite appreciated how in both of these episodes it said, previously on Arrow and the Flash. And I loved that this episode was not them fighting, but a through and through team up, and they are still doing a really great job with, like, there are some conflicts between this thing of, as I've mentioned in some of my videos on Arrowverse, Flash is not quite as intense as Arrow, and that's part of what makes it work well. I think it would have been extremely boring. Like, I think it would have been very, very detrimental to the Arrowverse if they had brought in, like, let's say Batman or, some other, harsh and gritty, hero that is part of a league. I like that they referenced that. They said, don't, maybe there should be like a league. Were you thinking one that involves justice? And yeah, I thought it worked really well. And in the flashbacks we see, it becomes extremely clear why Oliver is so ready to torture. The first time he was asked to do so, he was not fast enough and intimidating enough, and it ended up with the bombs going off. So yeah, and I think that is it for the overall. So let's go scene by scene. Yeah, let's see. I think the first thing was them on the mission. They traced the the something from the boomerang, and yeah, they find out, oh, this place is rigged to blow, so it's a trap. What's our next move? Spring the trap. And yeah, turns out Argus is also investigating this, and the thing about, stay out of this. Are we going to stay out of this? What do you think? Which, like, yeah, that's exactly what the audience was saying. Like, as soon as the Argus guy was like, stay out of this, I was thinking, I don't think Oliver is gonna. You really don't know who you're talking to, do you? And I guess that brings us to I think that's when they talk about how, seems if it's Argus, maybe Lila could help. And I like the running thing of, Dig calling her sweetie, and she says, you only call me sweetie when you want something. And, first it's it's to be given access to some material about Digger. Then it's a gun, and then there at the end it's because he wants her to say I do. That's genuinely really, really sweet. And I have heard that is an actual thing. Like, it's also a Hollywood trope, but I have heard from women that they'll pick up on if a guy is being extra nice because he wants something. And I think that is when, so Felicity thinks, it's Jerry, and then turns out it's Kate and Cisco, and yeah, I quite appreciate, Kate is again trying to be, professional and such, and Cisco's just like, Arrow Cave, Aeromobile? Nah, I think you might be thinking of the Bat-themed guy, but yeah. And I like the thing about, like, we do not call it the Arrow Cave, and then, Roy is like, so we're just selling admission to the Arrow Cave now. And yeah, it was, I did quite like them seeing the, reacting to the gadgets and the, don't touch that either. And Felicity, so usually she has the best line in the episode. This time she had the best look. When Oliver was like, "Do you see what you're doing?" And the just, yeah, fantastic. And I like how at first Roy is like, I don't know about these guys and this guy and this girl, and then Cisco is like, red is so much cooler than green. You know what? I think I'm starting to like these. That's pretty funny. And yeah, I mean, he was the one who chose to make the Flash wear red, so of course he would find that the more appealing of the Arrow suits. And I think that does... Is that maybe when Barry flashes into town? I think the it's around there at least. I guess it was just a matter of time before Thea would be on the receiving end of one of those, gusts of wind when Flash runs past. And the fact that we are seeing the thing about like, the fact that, because she's talking to Chase, the fact that we kiss doesn't mean anything. I think the fact that the audience is overhearing that conversation does mean that it does mean something. And let's see, I feel like there's at least one thing that was so they didn't use the code name, I don't think, but Digger Harkness is indeed the real, the given name, the non-alter ego, the ego of the person that I thought it was. I thought they used him really well here. I love that, so the first time we saw him, he throws a boomerang and it hits the guy in the back because it boomerangs back and hits there. And then this time he throws the boomerang and it cuts the guy, and then he catches it afterwards instead of it going to the back of. So, we have some variety there. And yeah, genuinely clever. He killed an Argus agent so that he could get the ID and then get in. And of course they let's see, canceled the ID or marked it something, so that it would. But yeah, and it was incredibly cool watching him just some of the time cut through using them as almost like blades or something, and other times just throwing them. I will say there was that one part where there's like two guards standing and he hits one of them and then it's like a second or two before it hits the other one. I don't know what the other guy was waiting for though, but it was cool. Rule of cool applies. And yeah, I quite liked, so this time Barry rather than Oliver is the one who shows up, surprising the other. And he did manage to stop those two boomerangs. Oliver, I don't know what exactly he would have been able to do there. And let's see. I guess that is the well, yeah, wait, let's see. There's the part where they are. No, yeah, I think that is that. So yeah, it did also feel just a tiny bit like the reason that Dig and Lila did not get hit, at least not in that scene, was a combination of plot armor and the fact that apparently nobody else at Argus has been trained in ducking. And let's see, I think that does. Yeah, I like the salmon climbing and the thing with, what's that for? Distracting me from work. Okay, fair enough. She did also have the best line, and the thing about, does he do this often? At least every Wednesday, because I'm pretty sure that's when the show is on. I feel like I read that somewhere, so that's pretty funny. Basically they're saying, yep, he does this every episode. And it is cool seeing Barry do and then Cisco tries, and he can't do even one, which, like, fair enough. Like, I would not be able to do one either. And let's see. I think that does bring us to... Yeah, so, yeah, they bring Lila back to the lair, and, I think it's Kate who points out secret identity, and, Barry's like, what? They're married. And I like... That was also another fun running thing throughout the episode of this, we're not married, they're not married, and yeah. And the salmon climbing made him hungry for sushi, which is a fun little thing of like, he was thinking fish, and he got hungry. So I feel like that's So that's when they find out that so at first Oliver does not want Barry working with him, and there's the thing about like, if we do this, we do it my way. Mistakes, I've made a few, but... And the thing about, okay, so it's going to take a while to reconstruct these busted up boomerangs. And then, Very just does it within like a second. Just, that was pretty funny. Or within a few seconds. And honestly, I did kind of like Cisco's kaboom boomerang. That was good. But yeah, it's... That's not necessarily the kind of quip. I'm not saying there's no quips on Arrow, but that's not the kind of quip that they would normally do. So they're like, I'm sorry, who is this guy again? And I think this is a pretty good time for me to just briefly recommend a YouTube video that fairly recently... Yeah, I quite appreciated Cheyenne Lynn's Manon exposing the cracks in Cat's Eye. And, I normally, like, legitimately, every single thing I know at all about, I want to say it's called K-pop, is from leftist YouTubers talking about the problems therein. I'm not saying I'm above listening to music. I don't listen to that much like current music at all. Anyway, the right, yeah. Part of why it's a woman's YouTube video I'm recommending is that it is Women's History Month, which is also why I want to highlight. I really love that the women are, once again, some of the most important. With Lila, it's not necessarily in a positive way, but that is also, I do appreciate this thing of underlining. I mean, it's not only Waller, and Waller also, she even gives, Oliver 2 chances, and it does seem like he succeeded the second time. I also like the thing of, each time, like, Oliver keeps calling her China White, and others are like, that's not her name, though. And yeah, Felicity helping with the tech side of things, and also letting them into the lair, which, like, without that, it would not have worked out. And Kate is one of the ones to cut the wire at the end. And I think it was also her who called Barry, wasn't it? I think I might... Yeah. Anyway, it was either her or Felicity. I'm almost certain it wasn't Cisco. And so they find the address for that other guy, and I was like, the thing of Racy there. I think that was a later scene, but it was and he zip ties them instead of having Oliver. And he is understandably very, very bothered by the torture. And Oliver doesn't even flinch. He just says, you agreed, my terms. This, and I like the thing about, the sun shines in, in Central City every day, which, like, I have noticed there's a lot of dark evening scenes in Arrow comparatively. And let's see. I feel like there's at least one more thing. Let's see. The the thing about, whether or not there's some humanity left in Oliver, that was great. I really appreciated that Barry doesn't just, it would be boring if he was just like giving up on him and be like, say something. But, he's like, no, it's still in there. I know that it is. You just have to choose it. And that is very much a philosophy I myself, endorse. I absolutely think we all are capable of making the world a better place. Not all in like a major way, but even small things count. Be the change you want to see in the world. And I guess that, yeah, I think that's when they go talk to Lance. Oh wait, or was that shortly before? Anyway, it was somewhere around there, and yeah, she points out, so Arrow was in Central City, and yeah, the thing about Lance, he's able to help a little with, and the thing about, I cannot believe you're brought back. Well, I'm probably former now. I mean, we had a bit of a problem recently, which, like, yeah, that's one way to put it, I guess. And what was the other thing? And Oliver, and I do appreciate, every so often the show acknowledges, hey, torture a lot of the time does not work. Like, it is not dependable. It's not that it never ever ever under any circumstances can lead to intel, but you cannot depend on it to give you credible intel. A lot of the time they'll just give a credible lie, even if you were confident that the person you're torturing knows something. You cannot be sure that torture will get the answer. And there are other, better, much more dependable ways. So he tortured the guy and got the phone, and that actually ended up, I don't know that, I do think Barry is right that it's not really Arrow's fault, but it also is the kind of thing where you do see, no, like, Barry is right about at least to an extent about this. I guess that brings us to the and I really liked the thing about, when he's listing all the bad things that have happened, and he brings up the dead mom right in front of him. Barry points out, my mom was killed right in front of me too, and I was just a child. And then Oliver goes, okay, I don't think we should make this a competition. But yeah, I do really appreciate that, because that is such a good point. They have both gone through really, really difficult things. And I do agree with Barry that at least some of the time, people will just use their personal trauma as an excuse to be a jerk. I'm sure that at least some of the people currently working for ICE have had bad experiences, but that just does not justify, was that an okay save? The kinds of things that they are doing to people, including completely innocent people who've done nothing wrong whatsoever, getting murdered by ICE. And yeah, episodes like this can help inoculate against indifference towards such things, so I really appreciate that. I guess that does... Not to mention Trump bombing Iran. Also, one of the things where Trump is, like, something bad happened to him. I'm sure he's had pain. We all, at some point in our lives, have pain. I'm not saying it's always to the same extent, but that doesn't make it okay to do these kinds of things. Let's see, but yeah, it was genuinely clever, luring them into this other place, and then, the guy's like, I never met Digger Harkness, but he paid me, what did he say, 10 G's to give you this phone. And, Dig pointing out 10 can become 20 I'll bet that's genuinely really clever, because that's the thing. That's what they did. They traced the phone. Digger knew that they would. Yeah, really appreciate this characterization for Digger. I wouldn't say I've hated any story that I've come across that he was in. Okay, mostly not, but I do like this, you know, the stories I'm familiar with where he plays an important role. He's not always this clever, and I really appreciated that they made him that here. And yeah, that was another way where some of the female characters in this episode really came through. They saved Lila. There's Felicity was the one who threw the thing that got Digger to leave. And, she puts pressure on the wound, and Kate gets the was it epinephrine, and injects, so yeah, these are, when you're hit in the torso and bleeding, that's genuinely, like, time is critical, and I really appreciate, because, like, Felicity, like, we remember she did not used to be even remotely okay with something like this. Like, think back to how she reacted when she found Oliver bleeding in the back of her car, and also learned that he was Arrow. And I guess that does. I mean, she did ultimately come through there as well, but she did have, she was very, very, scared, and by now she's more, she jumps into action sooner. I feel like there was at least one more thing I wanted to say. Yeah, and Dig being genuinely really, really scared about something happening to Lila, and then it does happen, and genuinely really clever, because, like, yeah, obviously they're not going to bring Lila on the mission to where Digger is, since he's trying to kill her, but that just means that she's left essentially defenseless. They try to put up a fight, but there's only so much they can do. Lila has training and a gun, but that was also great. The thing about, where are the guns? And she also, what's it called? She used that other thing. Yeah, nicely done on that. And ultimately, Flash and Arrow find Digger, and then they do something that I feel is inspired by, I don't know if anybody else remembers this, but after, was it after the entire Dark Knight trilogy, or was it after part of it? But there was this comedy video. It might have been College Humor, but I honestly don't recall. But yeah, someone animated a video where they said, well, I mean, Superman would easily have gotten to the hidden bombs in time, and so they're like, okay, I mean, we can do that. If should we consider that a request? And the yeah, genuinely really clever, this thing of, like, well, they're connected. It's all connected. And so, 5 different people have to all cut the wire at the exact same time. I just want there to be an outtake where, like, the communications goes out and it's like, oh, crap. But yeah, and Barry, of course, able to get them all there. Yeah, really love how they are able to use both. This gives me a lot of hope, because I do not think this is the last crossover episode. So far they're doing an amazing job of making sure the different characters have something to do. This is something, I don't know, maybe I'm a broken record on this. There's a lot I love about the first 2 Fox X-Men movies. I wish that they had done at least a slightly better job making sure everyone had something to do, because there's so many superpowers in those movies, and at times characters sometimes they'll be, like, knocked out, or there'll be something preventing them from using their powers, but we just end up with all these people not getting to use their powers. I've talked at length about it before, but I just wanted to say I really feel like they did a great job here. And I appreciate there's not as many powers at play here, but I do really feel like they did a fantastic job. Yeah, maybe that's also the Fantastic Four movies, those first two, well, I was gonna say Fox, but I guess the first three or four, whatever, the 2000s ones, Chris Evans, those only had four superpowers, and they also struggled to give everyone something to do. So yeah, for this one, there's that one scene where it's Roy, Arrow, Roy, Oliver, and also Flash all at once. Right, and Digger. All of them are using powers or gadgets or something, and no one feels like they're just forgotten. That was so freaking cool when they're like, he's such a badass. He can fight off two arrows at once, and he is slicing and kicking, and when Roy got out like two batons, it's so freaking cool. And I think that does pretty much. Yeah, I like the ending with the I want to say Rocky 3 is the one that does the, who won? Guess it's up to the audience to decide kind of thing. But I can absolutely see that Oliver would still want to be like, I bet I could take him, because he's like, technically the reason the fight ended was because of the lights, and I had nothing to do with that, but bet I could take him. And yeah, like I genuinely, he fires two arrows, and Flash is speeding at him, catches both of them. I wouldn't rule out that he might be able to just, I was sitting there thinking maybe a delayed effect from the arrows or something, but yeah. I also like the thing about like, oh, are you going to shoot me in the back again? Barry, you're going to have to let that one go. And also, yeah, the details of the torture were also, this thing of like, the only thing, what hurts more than an arrow going in? An arrow being pulled out. Answer me if you ever want to be able to raise your arm again. Which, like, yeah, he might take away your ability to ask a question in class. You really want that? And yeah, it was so cool, them dealing with Digger and the arrow that like strangulates him, and he points out about the bombs, and then the thing of like, maybe your detonator was a little bit too slow. And I like the thing about like, he does arrow him just one more time, and Barry's like, you just couldn't help it, could you? I feel like, I liked Thea trying to, there is still some of the Thea Queen of Past in there, because they're, you guys okay? Just had a rough day. Is there anything I can do to help? Just like, she does care still. I mean, it's one thing that like with Oliver, she clearly still cares, but her ex, and I mean, she didn't have that much of a relationship with Felicity, really. She doesn't even know Cisco. I also like the thing about like, them explaining who, or giving just a little bit of detail about who Thea is, and Cisco being like, so you're telling me to stay away? And yeah, it's very consistent with his character that like, if he sees a conventionally attractive woman, he is immediately falling for her. And I feel like there's at least one more thing that I really want to make sure to comment on in the episode. Let me think. I'm just going to real quick mentally fast forward through the episode. I definitely did want to note. So I think I might have said in at least one of these videos already that from what I understand, and I have to admit, I've only, right, they do actually, they say in this episode, Suicide Squad. So yeah, the stories I've read that have Digger Harkness are Suicide Squad stories. And from what I understood, I heard something somewhere about that traditionally the Boomerang wielder is a Flash villain. And I can understand that because there's again that thing of, I understand they reached a decision. Understand that decision because, it's not the only case where there's some kind of projectile that he then has to avoid. Like Captain Cold, it's the cold that's the thing. But I did I can imagine it's happened in the comics as well. I did think it was great here to have him and Arrow, or maybe in the comics it's Batman, but someone who also uses gadgets, and that was also really cool. Like last time, obviously, there was room to show. It wouldn't have made sense for him to show off a bunch of different boomerangs, but to here get, the explosive ones, and there's the smoke bomb one and such, and yeah, I like to think that when he goes home after a long day of throwing boomerangs, he throws a boomerang with a key into the keyhole of the door, throws one to fetch his slippers for him, throws one to turn on the TV to the sports network, and just, sits there, relaxes, probably still with the boomerangs in some kind of way,